London in the 1800s was a city of stark contrasts. For the wealthy, winter meant roaring fires, thick blankets, and warm meals. For the poor, it meant a daily battle against freezing temperatures, hunger, and disease. Winter in Victorian London wasn't just a season, it was a merciless test of survival that revealed the brutal divide between those who could buy warmth and those who had to fight for it. Here's what life was really like during London's brutal Victorian winters. If you fall asleep to these stories, that's what they're for. So like or subscribe. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. Comment below. Love seeing listeners from Texas to Toronto to Tokyo all here at the same time. Well, not the same time. You know what I mean? Alright, tonight it's Victorian London winters, but wait, are you comfortable? No, really, check. Pillows, blankets, the whole deal. Where we're going, you'll want to be settled. Your eyes open to darkness. Complete darkness. It takes a moment to realise that your eyes are actually open. The room is just that dark. The cold hits you before anything else, a bone-deep chill that somehow manages to seep through the thin patched blanket covering your body. You're not alone on the straw mattress. Your younger sister is pressed against your back and your brother's feet are tangled with yours, a necessary tangle of limbs for warmth. It's that magical body heat, not comfort, that makes it so hard to pull yourself up, not like your cosy, solitary bed right now. The single room your family calls home, all 6 of you, isn't just cold. It's colder than outdoors somehow. When you exhale, your breath forms a cloud that hangs in the air like a ghost. The frost has crept inside, painting delicate patterns on the inside of your single window. A cruel kind of beauty for those who can't afford beauty of any other kind. You sit up, your joints ache from the cold. This is the first survival test of the day, simply getting out of bed. Jamie's coughing again, your mother whispers from her corner of the room. She's already up, as always. You wonder if she ever sleeps. Her face is lined beyond her 35 years, carved by winter after winter of this same merciless cold. I spent 3 months researching Victorian winters for a history project once. The records from hospitals are basically horror novels. Cold killed more people than you'd think possible through 1,000 different paths, but cold was at the start of all of them. Your feet hit the floor and you wince. The wooden boards feel like ice. No rugs here, not in this part of London. You've heard rich people have carpets so thick you sink into them. Hard to imagine when your toes are already numb after just seconds on the bare floor. Jamie's cough rattles again. A wet, dangerous sound. Your 6-year-old brother has been fighting this cough for 2 weeks now. In summer, it might have been nothing. In winter, a cough is never nothing. We need a fire, you mutter, looking at the cold grate. The previous night's ashes are still there, a few sad cinders among the grey. Got anything to burn? Your mother asks, though she knows the answer. The first task of every winter day, find fuel, anything that will burn. The wealthy in their fine homes on the other side of the city wake to fires already burning, stoked by servants who crept in before dawn. Their coal cellars are full, their children never know what it means to be truly cold. I'll find something, you say, because what choice is there? You pull on every piece of clothing you own, which isn't much. Shirt, patched trousers, a threadbare coat that might have been blue once, but is now the universal colour of London poor. A sooty, indeterminate grey. No gloves. Those were pawned weeks ago. Your boots have holes in them, but they're better than nothing. Side note, most poor Victorian kids didn't even have shoes. Like, at all. They just walked barefoot through the snow. Can you imagine? I get whiny when my socks get wet. Your mother hands you a cup of what passes for tea, mostly water with the memory of tea leaves that have been reused too many times. It's lukewarm at best, but you drink it down, anything to put something in your stomach. Take care out there, she says. The fog's a thick one today. Of course it is. Winter fog in Victorian London wasn't just any fog, it was a living, choking thing, what they called a pea super, yellow-grey smog so thick you could barely see your hand in front of your face, coal smoke from 1,000 chimneys mixed with the natural mist rising from the Thames, creating a toxic cloud that burned the lungs and stung the eyes. You wrap a ragged scarf around your face before heading out, not for warmth, though that's a nice side effect, but to filter at least some of the poisonous air. Wait, your sister calls. She's 9, with eyes too old for her face. She hands you a small tin cup. For coal. Hope. Sometimes it's all you have. You step outside and the fog swallows you whole. The narrow alley you live on has vanished into yellowish-white nothingness. You can hear London, the clatter of cartwheels, distant shouts, the clank of metal from the street sweeper somewhere nearby, but you can't see more than a few feet ahead. The cold is different out here. In your room, it was still, stagnant. Outside, it moves, finds every gap in your clothing, every inch of exposed skin. The wind funnels down the narrow alleys of your slum neighbourhood, cutting like knives. Hold up. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine the coldest you've ever been, then add damp to it. London cold wasn't just about temperature. It was about the humidity that soaked into your bones. It was about fog that clung to your skin and clothes. It was a cold that didn't just touch you, it moved into you and set up home. Your first stop is always the same, the back of the bakery 3 streets over. If you're lucky, the baker might have some broken pieces of coal that fell from his delivery. Sometimes there are even burnt crusts of bread to take home. Today, you're not the only one with this idea. 3 other children are already scrabbling in the ash heap behind the shop. This is normal. Winter creates competitors of everyone. Nothing left, a boy younger than you mutters as you approach. His face is black with soot, his fingers raw from digging, but you look anyway because you must. You dig through the ashes, ignoring the way they work into the cracks of your chapped hands, the way they sting, and there, a small lump of coal missed by the others. You pocket it quickly. It's not enough for a proper fire, but it's a start. The baker emerges from his back door, face flushed from his ovens. For a moment, the blessed heat washes over you before the door closes again. Off with you lot, he says, but there's no real menace in it. He tosses a few burnt ends of bread onto the ground. Share those? In summer, this might be humiliating. In winter, it's salvation. You grab a piece, nod thanks, and move on. The crust goes into your pocket. Not for you, for Jamie. The coal was for everyone, the food is for the sick. Your next destination is the Thames. The great river that bisects London is partly frozen near the banks, though the middle still flows, dark and dangerous. But the frozen edges are a hunting ground for the desperate. Sometimes coal falls from the barges, sometimes there's driftwood, sometimes there are things that might not be meant for burning, but will burn anyway. The river is a 15-minute walk, but in the fog and cold it takes twice that. By the time you reach the Thames, your feet are numb in your leaking boots. The scene at the riverbank is something from a nightmare, or would be if it weren't so common. Dozens of people, mostly children, scrabbling along the frozen edges of the river. They're called mudlarks, these river scavengers, searching for anything of value that might wash up. In winter, that usually means fuel. You spot a familiar face. Will, a boy from 2 streets over. His father died last winter. Pneumonia, they said, though in the slums the actual disease is often just a formality. Cold and hunger are the real killers. Morning, Will calls, his voice muffled by the scarf around his face. Found anything good? Bit of coal at Baker's, you reply. You? Will holds up a piece of driftwood, waterlogged but large enough to burn. This'll dry out by tonight. Might burn for an hour. An hour of heat. It sounds like a fortune. This is the winter economy of the poor. Not pounds and shillings, but minutes of warmth, hours of survival. The ice at the river's edge creaks ominously under your feet. Every year children fall through. Some are pulled out, some aren't. It's a risk you take because you must. As you pick your way along, eyes scanning for anything useful, you notice something dark against the dirty ice. Another lump of coal, larger than the one you found earlier. It must have fallen from a coal barge and washed to shore. You glance around. No one else has spotted it yet. You move carefully, trying not to draw attention, not out of selfishness. Your family simply needs it desperately. Just as your fingers close around it, you hear a shout. A boy about your age has spotted what you're doing. He moves towards you, face determined. I saw it first, he lies. You know how this goes. In summer, maybe you'd argue. In winter, conflict takes energy you can't spare. But then something unexpected happens. The boy stops, looks at you more closely, and recognition dawns. You're the one with the sick brother, he says. Word travels in the slums. Everyone knows everyone's business, everyone's struggles. You nod. Take it, he says, then lowers his voice. My ma says there's a coal cart that tipped over on Bridge Street. Drivers waiting for help to right it. Some spilled. This is how the poor survive winter, not through charity from above, but through the small kindnesses of those who have nothing to give except information. Bridge Street, you repeat. Thanks. He nods and moves on, back to his own desperate hunt. You pocket the coal and head toward Bridge Street, moving as quickly as your frozen feet will allow. The fog has lifted slightly, but the cold remains, a constant pressure on your chest. The boy was right. On Bridge Street, a coal cart has slid on the icy cobblestones and tipped. The driver and another man are trying to right it while a small crowd gathers, ostensibly to help, but really to see if they might snatch a piece or two of the spilled fuel. It's like watching hungry dogs circle a fallen piece of meat. Everyone here needs that coal. Everyone here has someone at home, cold, waiting. The policeman hasn't arrived yet. That gives everyone a small window of opportunity. You edge closer, trying to look helpful rather than desperate. The cart driver is cursing, his breath clouding in the cold air. "Give me a hand here," he calls to the gathering men. Several move forward to help push the cart upright. You see your chance. While attention is on the cart, you quickly grab 2 fist-sized pieces of coal from where they've scattered on the ground. Not enough to be obviously stealing, but enough to make a difference. You've just straightened up when you hear a shout. Oi, you there. Your heart freezes colder than the air around you. You turn to see a constable emerging from the fog, his tall hat and blue coat materializing like an apparition. And this is where it gets complicated, because stealing coal, even coal that's spilled onto the street, that's not just frowned upon, that's a crime. And in Victorian London, crimes were punished harshly, especially when committed by the poor. "What have you got there, boy?" the constable demands, reaching for you. You're about to run, the automatic response of the poor to authority, when the cart driver intervenes. "He's helping me," the man says gruffly. "I told him he could have a piece or two for his trouble." The driver's eyes meet yours briefly. Another small kindness from a stranger. The poor looking out for the poor? Sometimes it's the only safety net that exists. The constable looks suspicious but nods curtly and turns his attention to moving the crowd along instead. "Thank you," you murmur to the driver as you help push the cart back onto its wheels. "Got family?" he asks quietly. "5 of us. Brother's sick." He nods, understanding everything that isn't said. "Take one more piece before you go. The big one there." You do, gratitude burning in your throat. 3 pieces of coal and a crust of bread. It's been a successful morning by winter standards. The walk home seems shorter, despite your numbed feet and the cold that has worked its way so deep into your bones that you've almost stopped feeling it. A dangerous sign in itself. Many who stop feeling the cold never feel anything again. The fog is thickening again as you make your way through the maze of slum streets. Twice you take a wrong turn, disoriented by how the familiar has been rendered strange and ghostly by the yellow haze. The gas lamps have been lit early due to the fog, but they provide little real light, just eerie floating globes that make the fog seem even more impenetrable, more supernatural. You pass a woman selling matches huddled in a doorway. Her face is blue with cold, her fingers so stiff she can barely hold her wares. You wonder if she sold any today. Who would stop in this weather? But she has no choice. No sales means no food, no coal, no life. "Just a penny, sir," she calls as you pass. "Keep your family warm." Your hand touches the coins in your pocket, earned last week cleaning out stables, meant for bread tomorrow. You hesitate, then drop a halfpenny into her palm. She blesses you with cracked lips. This is winter's terrible math, calculating whether you can afford both food and warmth, whether you can sacrifice a bit of one to prevent someone else from losing everything. By the time you reach home, your family is up. Your father has already left for the docks, where he'll work regardless of weather, unloading cargo in the freezing spray of the Thames. If he's lucky, he'll get work today. If not, he'll stand in line for hours in the cold, waiting for jobs that never materialise. "Look what I found," you say, showing them the coal pieces with pride. Your mother's face lights up, a rare sight in winter. "We'll have a proper fire tonight," she says, carefully setting the precious fuel aside. They'll save it for the evening when everyone is home and the cold is at its worst. Your sister has managed to get a small fire going with scraps of paper and broken bits of a wooden crate someone discarded. It's hardly a fire at all, more smoke than heat, but it's something. Jamie is sitting close to it, blanket wrapped around his thin shoulders, still coughing. You give him the crust of bread from your pocket. "Eat slow," you tell him. "Make it last." This is another winter lesson, how to stretch everything, food, fuel, strength, to its absolute limit. Outside, the church bells toll the hour, muffled by the fog. 9 o'clock. The day has barely begun, and already you've faced more challenges than most wealthy Londoners will face in a week. "You'll need to get water," your mother says, handing you a bucket. Another daily task. The communal pump in the courtyard is likely frozen again. You'll have to thaw it somehow. As you head back out into the cold, you glance up. Through a rare break in the fog, you can see the sky. A strange milky blue that seems impossibly distant. Somewhere up there, the sun is shining. Hard to believe on days like these. A distant church bell tolls, its sound dampened by the fog. The day is only beginning, and already you've fought several battles for warmth, for food, for simple survival. But that's winter in Victorian London for the poor. It isn't just a season to endure. It's a daily war against the cold, against hunger, against death itself. And as you step back into the fog, bucket in hand, you know there are many more battles to come before this day is done. The communal water pump stands in the middle of the courtyard, surrounded by a small crowd of people with buckets and pots. As expected, it's frozen solid. An old man is pouring hot water from a kettle over the pump's handle, trying to thaw it. Steam rises in the frigid air as the crowd waits patiently. This is normal. This is winter. "Morning, Jack," you say, joining the queue. The old man nods in greeting. "Third time it's frozen today," he mutters. "Gonna be a bad one." Bad ones are relative in London winters. They're all bad. Some are just deadly instead of merely miserable. When your turn finally comes, you crank the handle and collect the precious water, which is already developing ice crystals by the time you're halfway home. Your fingers, red and swollen from cold, can barely grip the handle of the bucket. Fun fact I learned from a museum guide in London: frostbite was so common that some people's fingers would literally fall off by the end of winter, like just drop right off, and that was considered not great, but also not the worst thing that could happen to you. At least you were alive, right? Back inside, your mother takes the water and pours some into a pot that she places on the small fire. The rest she saves in a corner, where it will likely freeze again before evening. "Mrs. Bennet's boy came by," she says, stirring the pot. "Inside is a thin gruel, more water than oats, but it's something. Says the textile factory's taking on extra hands today. Big order came in. The textile factories are notorious, loud, dangerous, full of flying lint that clogs the lungs. But they pay, and in winter, that's all that matters." "I'll go," you say, already calculating. Half a day's wage might buy a loaf of bread, maybe even a bit of cheese. If you're quick, you could still make it to the market before closing and bring home something besides the usual gruel. Your mother nods, relief visible on her face. "Take your sister with you. They're hiring women too." Your sister, Emma, looks up from where she's tending to Jamie. At 12, she's already worked in half the factories in your part of London. Her small fingers are valued for delicate tasks that adult hands struggle with. "Can you manage?" she asks your mother, glancing at Jamie. "We'll be fine," your mother says, though you all know Jamie isn't fine. His cough sounds worse, and his forehead burns with fever despite the cold room. But there's no choice. You need money to survive, and money means leaving the sick to tend themselves. Emma pulls on her shawl, a threadbare thing that offers more idea of warmth than actual protection, and stands beside you, ready to face the day. "Don't forget," your mother says as you head out. "The coal is for tonight when your father gets home." As if you could forget. The 3 precious lumps of coal are the difference between comfort and misery, possibly even life and death if Jamie's fever worsens. The textile factory is a 20-minute walk through streets that have grown slightly more visible as the morning progresses. The worst of the fog has lifted, though the air remains thick with coal smoke that burns your lungs with each breath. The streets have come fully alive now. Vendors line the busier corners despite the cold, selling everything from matches to hot potatoes to questionable meat pies. Their faces are chapped red from hours in the frigid air, but they call out their wares with forced cheerfulness. Hot potatoes. Warm your hands. Fill your belly. Matches. Penny a box. Keep your fire going. Pies, hot meat pies. You pass a woman roasting chestnuts over a small brazier, the smell making your empty stomach clench painfully. The brazier serves 2 purposes: cooking her wares and keeping her from freezing to death during the long day of street selling. "We should have taken the bread crust for ourselves," Emma mutters, eyeing the chestnut seller longingly. "Jamie needs it more," you remind her, though your own hunger is a constant companion, sharper in winter when the body burns more energy just trying to stay warm. In summer, hunger is different. It's uncomfortable, but bearable. Winter hunger is an animal clawing at your insides, demanding to be fed. The street grows more crowded as you near the factory district. Men and women hurry past, heads down against the cold, breath-forming clouds that join the general miasma hanging over the city. Many look as hungry as you feel, their faces gaunt with the particular hollowness that winter brings to the poor. "Look," Emma says suddenly, pointing. A cart has pulled up outside a shop delivering goods. As the men unload crates, one slips on the icy cobblestones and drops his load. The crate cracks open, spilling apples across the ground. You both freeze, watching. The driver curses, the shopkeeper emerges to shout, and in the confusion, several street children dart forward, grabbing apples and vanishing into the crowd. "Should we?" Emma whispers. You hesitate. Stealing is risky, but then you see the shopkeeper kick a bruised apple aside carelessly, leaving it in the gutter. "That one," you say. "It's not stealing if they've abandoned it." Emma nods and casually crosses the street. With the practiced nonchalance of the poor, she bends to adjust her shoe and palms the discarded apple in one smooth motion. By the time the shopkeeper glances her way, she's already moving on, the prize hidden in the folds of her shawl. Halfway down the next alley, she pulls it out. The apple is bruised on one side, but the rest is perfectly good. She splits it with you, and you both eat quickly, the sweet tart flesh an explosion of flavour after days of nothing but gruel and stale bread. "Don't tell Mother," you say around a mouthful. "She'll say we should have brought it home to share." Emma nods, wiping juice from her chin. "Sometimes you need strength just to make it through the day." This is another winter calculation, balancing immediate needs against family obligation. You feel a pang of guilt, but it passes. The apple will give you energy to work, to earn money for more food for everyone. Sometimes survival means making hard choices. The textile factory looms ahead, a huge brick building with narrow windows clouded by steam from within. Even from outside you can hear the thunderous clatter of the looms, a constant roar that gets into your bones. A group of people are gathered at the side entrance, the hiring door. Men and women, boys and girls, all with the same hungry look, the same threadbare clothes, the same hope for a day's wage. A foreman emerges, a thick-necked man bundled in a wool coat far better than anything the waiting workers own. He eyes the crowd with bored indifference. "Need 20, he calls out. 10 men, 5 women, 5 children. 12 hours, half pay at midday, half when you finish." There must be 40 people waiting. You elbow your way forward, pulling Emma along. Her size works against her here. The foreman wants children who can climb under the machines, clean out lint and tie broken threads, all while the looms keep thundering away. "Me and my sister," you say, putting Emma forward. "She's worked looms before. I can carry." The foreman looks Emma up and down, then nods. "You, girl, inside. You." He points at you, with the men loading wool. Emma gives your hand a quick squeeze before disappearing inside. The separation is expected. Men and women work in different sections of the factory, but still you feel a pang of worry. The textile factories are dangerous. Fingers caught in machines, hair tangled in belts, lungs filled with cotton dust. But it's work, and work means food. You join the men at the loading dock where huge bales of raw wool are being offloaded from carts. The work is simple but exhausting. Carry the bales from the carts to the sorting room. Each bale weighs nearly as much as you do, and the foreman expects 2 men to handle each one. Your partner is a weather-beaten man in his 40s with hands like cracked leather and a perpetual cough. He introduces himself as Bill. "First time here?" he asks as you both heft a bale between you. "First time this winter," you reply, already feeling the strain in your back. Bill nods. "Pace yourself. It's a long day. The work is all the more brutal because of the cold. The loading dock isn't heated. Only the rooms with the expensive machines get that luxury. Your hands, already chapped from morning scavenging, crack and bleed as the rough wool scratches against them. but the physical effort at least warms your body, sending blood flowing to limbs that have been half frozen for days. By midday, you've moved 30 bales. Your back screams with every lift, your hands are raw, and your empty stomach is a gnawing void. But when the foreman hands you your half-day pay, a few coins that represent the difference between eating and going hungry, the pain seems worth it. The workers get 30 minutes for food. Some have brought scraps from home, hard crusts, cold potatoes, the odd bit of cheese. Those who haven't, including you, head to the factory gate where vendors wait, knowing payday when they see it. You spend a precious coin on a bowl of pea soup from a woman with a cart. The soup is watery and barely warm, but it contains actual peas and a floating chunk of something that might generously be called meat. It's the best thing you've tasted in days. As you eat, standing in the shelter of a doorway to avoid the worst of the wind, you scan the street for Emma. The women and children eat separately, and you've saved a copper to buy her something too. You spot her finally, huddled with a group of young girls, sharing what looks like a meat pie between them. Her face is grey with exhaustion, and there's a smudge of blood on her sleeve. A minor injury, hopefully, but she's eating, and that's what matters. When the whistle blows for return to work, you feel marginally better. The soup sits warm in your belly, and the coins for the second half of the day are a comforting weight in your pocket. The afternoon work is harder. Your muscles, already taxed, scream with each new bale. The cold seems to have penetrated deeper, and even the constant movement doesn't keep it at bay. Your breath forms clouds in the frigid air of the loading dock, and your sweat freezes on your skin in a bizarre combination of overheating and freezing simultaneously. Bill, your work partner, seems to be struggling too. His cough has worsened throughout the day, and by mid-afternoon he's stopping every few minutes to hack painfully, bringing up phlegm that he spits onto the already filthy floor. "Factory lung," he explains during one such break, seeing your concern. "Got it my first winter in the mills. Never goes away, just gets worse every year." You've heard of it before. The textile workers call it bicinosis, or brown lung, caused by years of breathing in lint and dust from cotton, flax and hemp. In winter, when the factories are sealed tight against the cold, the air inside becomes a thick soup of fibres that coat the lungs like wet cement. "How long have you worked in textiles?" you ask, helping him lift another bale. 20 years, give or take, Bill replies. "Started when I was younger than you, back when a man could still save a bit, maybe move up to better work eventually." He laughs, the sound dissolving into another cough. "That's all done now. Once the lung gets you, no one wants to hire you for better jobs. You stay where you are until you can't work at all. Then you die." He says it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. This is simply the reality for working poor in Victorian London. A slow deterioration in jobs that destroy the body, with no safety net when health finally fails. "You're young," Bill adds, studying your face. "Get out of textiles if you can. Find something else." As if jobs are just lying around waiting to be claimed. As if winter offers choices. You just nod and keep working. Survival first. Dreams of better work can come after the immediate threat of freezing or starving has passed. By 4 o'clock, the winter sun is already setting, though it's hard to tell through the perpetual grey haze hanging over London. The gas lamps in the streets are being lit, their weak glow creating islands of light in the gathering darkness. Inside the factory, the lamps have been lit for hours. The loading dock where you work is the least illuminated area. No sense wasting expensive lamp oil where only heavy labour happens. You and the other men work in a grey twilight that makes the already dangerous job of moving heavy bales even more treacherous. It happens in an instant. Bill stumbles on a patch of ice near the dock edge. The bale shifts, throwing you off balance too. For a terrifying moment, the massive weight pulls you toward the edge, where a 15-foot drop awaits. Then other hands grab the bale, steadying it, stopping your fall. "Watch yourselves," the foreman shouts from his supervisory position by the door where he's been keeping warm all day. Bill's face is ashen as he regains his footing. "Too close," he mutters. "Sorry about that, lad." You nod, heart still pounding. A fall like that could mean broken bones, which means no work, which means no money for coal or food. In winter, an injury isn't just painful. It's potentially fatal for your entire family who depends on your income. Wait, sorry, this sounds a bit dramatic, right? Like I'm exaggerating, but I interviewed an actual historian about this, and she confirmed that even a simple broken leg in winter could spiral into a family's complete financial ruin, and sometimes even death. There was no sick leave, no workers' compensation, no social safety net at all. If you couldn't work, you didn't eat. Period. By the time the final whistle blows at 6 o'clock, you're dead on your feet. Every muscle screams, your hands are raw and bleeding in several places, and the cold has worked so deep into your bones that you can't imagine ever being truly warm again. But you have your pay, a handful of coins that represent heat and food for your family. As the workers stream out of the factory gates, you wait near the women's exit for Emma. She emerges with a group of girls, all of them looking as exhausted as you feel. Her face is pale except for 2 bright spots of colour on her cheeks. Not health, but the flush of overwork in a room that's alternately too hot from the steam of the machines and too cold from drafts through poorly sealed windows. "How was it?" you ask, falling into step beside her. "They put me on the cleaning crew," she says, holding up her hands. Her fingers are raw, nails torn, crawling under the looms while they're still running to clear out the lint. "Jenny, a girl I was working with, got her hair caught in one of the belts. They had to cut it off to free her. She was lucky it wasn't her scalp." You've heard worse stories from the textile factories. Children losing fingers, hands, sometimes even their lives to the relentless machines. Emma's torn nails and exhaustion seem a small price in comparison. "Did they pay you fairly?" you ask. She nods, showing you her coins. "Not as much as you earned, of course. Women and children always earn less, regardless of how dangerous or difficult their work, but still a decent amount for a day's labour. Together, you have enough for a real meal tonight, with some left over for tomorrow's bread. Combined with the coal you found this morning, it feels like a small victory against the winter. The streets are fully dark now, lit only by the weak glow of gas lamps that create pools of yellowy light every 20 yards or so. Between these islands of illumination are stretches of almost complete darkness, made all the more impenetrable by the fog that has settled again, thick and choking. The walk home is nerve-wracking. Winter nights in London are dangerous in ways that go beyond the cold. Footpads and pickpockets prey on workers on payday, knowing that even the poorest labourer will be carrying at least a few coins after work. You and Emma walk quickly, staying in the lamplight when possible, taking the most populated routes despite the longer distance. Safety in numbers is more than a saying in winter London. It's a survival strategy. "Should we get something to eat now?" Emma asks as you pass a vendor selling hot eels, the steam from his cart creating a fragrant cloud in the cold air. The smell makes your stomach growl painfully. After a day of heavy labour, your body is desperate for more sustenance than the midday soup provided. But you shake your head. "Better to buy something we can share with everyone," you say. "There's a chandler's shop on the corner that sells cheap cuts. Maybe we can get a bit of bacon for the gruel." Emma nods, though you can see the longing in her eyes as you pass the eel seller. Hot food now versus better food for all later, another of winter's cruel calculations. The chandler's shop is still open, a common practice in working-class neighbourhoods where customers can only shop after their workday ends. Inside, the smell of tallow candles mixes with that of the various foodstuffs hanging from hooks or stored in barrels. Saltfish, cheese rinds, bacon, and miscellaneous goods that all but the poorest can afford. You spend your coins carefully: a small piece of bacon, a half-pound of oats, a precious ounce of tea leaves, real ones, not the twice-used leaves you've been making do with. These small luxuries feel enormous after weeks of near-starvation rations. "We're eating like kings tonight," Emma says with a grin as you leave the shop, your purchases wrapped in paper and clutched tightly. The final stretch home feels less threatening with food in hand and most of your pay still secure in your deepest pocket. The neighbourhood grows shabbier as you approach your tenement, the buildings leaning drunkenly against each other, the streets narrower and darker, with fewer gas lamps to light the way. The smell hits you before you even enter your street, a mix of human waste from overflowing cesspits, smoke from hundreds of small fires burning whatever fuel people can find, and the general miasma of too many bodies living in too little space with too little opportunity to wash. In summer, this smell is overpowering, sickening. In winter, oddly, it's almost welcome, the smell of life continuing despite everything, of human resilience in the face of nature's cruelty and society's indifference. Your building looms ahead, a crumbling 5-story tenement that houses 30 families in spaces designed for 10. The stairs creak ominously as you climb to your 3rd-floor room, the wood rotted in places from persistent damp. Outside your door, you pause. Inside, you can hear Jamie coughing, that same wet, rattling sound that's been growing worse for days. But you can also hear something else, your father's voice, low and rumbling. He's home early, which means either good luck or very bad luck at the docks. You push open the door, the precious food clutched in your hand, unsure whether you're about to face celebration or crisis. Inside, the room is warmer than when you left. Not comfortable by any normal standard, but noticeably less frigid. The small fire from this morning has been built up with what looks like pieces of a broken wooden crate. The precious coal remains untouched in the corner. Your father sits by the fire, his massive frame seeming too large for the tiny room. His clothes are damp, his face haggard with exhaustion, but he smiles when you and Emma enter. "There they are," he says, his voice rough from years of shouting over dockyard noise. "My working children. Your mother is stirring something in the pot over the fire. Just water and a few vegetables, but it smells wonderful after a day of labour." "Pa, you're home early," Emma says, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Your father's expression shifts, something flashing behind his eyes. Dock foreman cut the day short, not enough ships coming in with the river partly frozen. He shrugs, aiming for casual, but not quite hitting it. Half-day's wage is better than nothing. You recognise the lie immediately. If he'd received even half pay, he'd have stopped at the pub on the way home, not out of vice, but necessity. The dock workers practically live on beer in winter. It provides calories and temporary warmth when food is scarce. His early return, completely sober, means something worse happened. Your mother catches your eye and gives a tiny shake of her head. "Don't ask. Not now." Instead, you hold up the package from the chandlers. "We got bacon and real tea." The mood in the room shifts instantly. Your mother's face lights up. Jamie stops coughing long enough to look interested, and even your father's troubled expression eases. "Let me see that," your mother says, taking the package and unwrapping it with the care usually reserved for precious jewels. She holds up the small slab of bacon like it's a religious artifact, and in a way it is, a symbol of temporary salvation from hunger. "We'll feast tonight," she declares, already cutting a thin slice to add to the pot. This is how winter happiness works for the poor. Small victories celebrated with disproportionate joy because they represent survival itself, while your mother prepares the meal, adding the oats to thicken the soup and the bacon to flavour it. You sit beside Jamie. His forehead burns against your hand, but his eyes seem clearer than this morning. "Did you really work in the factory?" he whispers, his voice hoarse from coughing. "The big textile one on Commercial Road," you confirm. "Carried wool bales all day." His eyes widen. To a sick 6-year-old, this sounds like an adventure rather than the brutal labour it was. "When I'm bigger, I'll work too," he declares. "When you're better," you correct gently. "First you need to get well." The truth you don't say. If he survives this winter, he'll be working alongside you by next year. Childhood in the slums is brutally short. Your father has been watching this exchange, his face unreadable. Now he stands, wincing slightly as he straightens his back. "Need to fetch more water," he announces, picking up the bucket. "I can go," you offer, already rising. You've done your share of work today, but your father looks exhausted beyond measure. He shakes his head. "Need the air," he says, and you understand. He needs a moment alone, away from the worried eyes of his family. After he leaves, your mother moves to sit beside you and Emma. "Your father's hand was crushed between crates this morning," she says quietly. "Not broken," the doctor says, "but badly bruised. Won't be able to work for at least a week." She swallows hard. "They gave him nothing for the lost time. Said he was lucky they didn't charge him for the doctor." The implications sink in like a stone. A week without your father's wages, in the dead of winter, with Jamie sick, even with you and Emma working. It won't be enough to feed 5 people and keep the fire going. "I'll find more work," you say, automatically. "Morning shifts at the factory, afternoon shifts somewhere else?" Your mother's face softens. She touches your cheek with a rough, work-worn hand. "You're a good child," she says, "but you can't work yourself to death either. We'll manage. We always do. The family prayer of the poor. We'll manage. We always do. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not." By the time your father returns with the water, the soup is ready, a thin gruel made marginally more substantial by the oats and flavoured with the precious bacon. Your mother has even brewed a pot of the real tea, its rich aroma filling the small room. You eat sitting on the floor around the fire, savouring each spoonful of the soup, making it last. The bacon adds a saltiness that seems miraculous after weeks of bland gruel, and the tea, when passed around in the family's single-chipped cup, tastes like liquid heaven. For a brief moment, the relentless cold and the constant worry recede. This is another winter miracle. Finding moments of joy in the smallest pleasures, in simply being together, alive, with full bellies and warm hands. After the meal, your father examines your day's wages and Emma's, combining them with the few coins he already had. "Should get us through a few days," he says, carefully storing the money in the battered tin box hidden beneath a loose floorboard. "And we've still got the coal for when it gets really cold." The temperature outside is already well below freezing, the kind of cold that kills the elderly and the very young in unheated rooms. But really cold is relative when you've lived through London winters. It can always get worse. Jamie's coughing has eased a bit after the hot meal, but his fever still burns. Your mother tucks him into the shared bed, piling the family's meagre collection of blankets around him. "I'll take first watch," she says, settling beside him. Someone needs to stay awake, to make sure his breathing doesn't worsen in the night, to keep the small fire going as long as the fuel lasts. You, Emma, and your father will sleep in shifts on the floor near the fireplace, maximising the benefit from the dying embers. This is normal winter sleeping arrangements. The sickest get the bed, everyone else makes do. Despite the exhaustion of the day's labour, sleep doesn't come easily. The floor is hard, the thin blanket barely keeps the chill at bay, and your muscles ache from carrying wool bales. Around midnight, your mother wakes you for your shift watching Jamie. "His fever's a bit lower," she murmurs, sliding onto the floor where you had been lying. "Wake me if his breathing changes." You sit beside Jamie on the bed, listening to the rattle in his chest. Outside, the wind howls down the narrow street, finding every crack in the poorly sealed window, sending drafts skittering across the floor. The fire has burned down to almost nothing, just a few glowing embers that give more psychological comfort than actual warmth. London at night in winter is never fully quiet. Even at this late hour you can hear coughing from neighbouring rooms, the cry of a hungry baby, the occasional shout or breaking glass from the pub at the corner, the sounds of poverty, of desperation, of life continuing despite everything. Jamie stirs, his eyes fluttering open. "Tell me a story," he whispers, his voice rough from coughing. You smile in the darkness. "What kind of story?" "One about summer," he says simply. So you tell him about last summer, when you took him to the Commons on a rare day off, how the sun felt on your faces, how you both ran barefoot through the grass, how you caught minnows in the stream with your hands. Small joys that cost nothing but seem like impossible luxuries in the grip of winter. Jamie falls asleep halfway through the story, his breathing slightly easier, his forehead cooler under your hand. A good sign. Children die so easily in winter, from cold, from hunger, from 100 diseases that prey on the weakened, that each improvement feels like a victory against death itself. The rest of the night passes in the half-sleep of the chronically cold, never fully unconscious, always aware of the chill creeping deeper into your bones. By dawn the room is freezing again, the fire completely out, frost patterns forming on the inside of the window. Your father rises first, moving stiffly, his injured hand held carefully at his side. Without speaking, he begins the morning ritual of trying to coax life into the fireplace using scraps of paper and the smallest splinters of wood salvaged from yesterday's crate. "I'll find more fuel today," you promise, knowing that without your father's income, the burden of keeping the family warm falls more heavily on your shoulders. He nods, his face grim. "Market might have work," he suggests. "They always need porters. Even with a bad hand, I could manage light loads." The desperation in his voice is painful to hear. A dock worker for 20 years, reduced to begging for the lowest jobs because of an injury that wasn't his fault. This is the precariousness of winter existence. One accident, one illness, one stroke of bad luck, and the thin margin between survival and disaster vanishes. Breakfast is a cup of water and the last heel of yesterday's bread carefully divided 5 ways. The rich tea and satisfying soup of last night already seem like a distant memory, a brief moment of abundance in the endless struggle to keep hunger at bay. "I'll try the factory again," you say, pulling on your coat. "Emma too." Your mother nods but adds, "If the textile mill isn't hiring, try the bakeries. They sometimes need delivery boys. Anything to keep moving in this cold." This is established winter wisdom. Keep moving or freeze. It's why even the most menial job is better than none at all in January. Activity generates heat, Heat means survival. Outside, the morning is brutally cold but clearer than yesterday. The fog has temporarily lifted, revealing a London transformed by frost. Every surface glitters with ice crystals. Every breath hangs in the air like a small cloud. It would be beautiful if it weren't so deadly. The textile factory is your first stop, but a sign on the gate delivers bad news. No hiring today. A small crowd of desperate workers stands outside anyway, hoping the sign is wrong or that someone hired won't show up. You consider joining them, but the odds seem poor. Better to try elsewhere than waste precious hours in a futile wait. Let's try the market, Emma suggests. If Pa's right, they might need both of us. Covent Garden Market is a long walk from your slum neighbourhood, but it's one of the few places that hires daily workers year-round. Food must move regardless of weather, and human labour is cheaper than horses when the streets are icy. The walk takes nearly an hour, your empty stomach already gnawing with hunger, fingers and toes numb despite constant movement. Emma trudges beside you, her face nearly hidden in her threadbare scarf, only her eyes visible, red-rimmed from the cold and smoke but determined. The market is a chaos of activity when you arrive. Carts and wagons jockey for position on the icy cobblestones, porters stagger under enormous loads of vegetables and fruits, sellers shout their wares to the bundled shoppers hurrying through the cold. In summer, the market smells of earth and greenery, of ripe fruit and fresh flowers. In winter, the smells are more subdued. Root vegetables, cabbages, the occasional whiff of citrus from imported oranges that only the wealthy can afford. The hiring corner is crowded with men and boys like you, stamping their feet against the cold, breath clouding as they call out their availability to passing merchants. Strong back here. Experienced porter, sir. Can carry all day, ma'am. It's a desperate chorus. A winter song of poverty. You join in, pushing yourself forward when you see a merchant looking around for workers. I can carry, sir. My sister too. She's stronger than she looks. Some ignore you. Some shake their heads. Too young, too small, not worth the pennies even at winter's desperate wages. But finally, a red-faced man selling potatoes beckons you over. Need these moved to my stall, he says, pointing to a wagon piled with sacks. Penny a sack. And there's 20. Can be split between you if you're quick about it. 20 pennies for perhaps an hour's work. Not as good as the factory, but better than nothing. You nod eagerly, and Emma is already moving toward the wagon. The sacks are heavy, 50 pounds at least, and the potato seller's stall is on the far side of the market. But you work quickly, efficiently, knowing that speed means the possibility of more work afterward. Emma takes the smaller sacks, you the larger ones, and between you, the job is finished in under an hour. The potato seller counts out the pennies grudgingly, as though parting with each coin causes him physical pain, but he also gives you each a small potato. Damaged ones can't sell 'em, which you pocket gratefully. Food and money, a double victory. The potato seller must spread word that you're reliable, because another merchant hires you immediately after. A woman selling winter greens who needs her stall reorganised and fresh stock brought from her storage cellar. By midday, you and Emma have earned nearly as much as you would have at the factory, plus accumulated several damaged items of food. The potatoes, a slightly wilted cabbage, an apple with a bruised spot, a feast by winter standards. The market operates differently in winter. Summer brings abundance, variety, colour. Winter is all about survival foods, potatoes, turnips, cabbages, onions, things that store well, that provide calories to burn against the cold, that can be stretched into soups and stews to feed many with little. During a brief break between jobs, you and Emma wander through the market, not shopping. You can't afford most of what's for sale, but absorbing the sensory experience. The relative warmth of bodies packed together, the calls of the sellers, the occasional luxury that seems almost mythical in your world. A pineapple from the colonies, hothouse flowers, a rabbit already skinned and ready for a rich person's pot. Oysters get your oysters. The call catches your attention. Oysters are one of London's strange winter paradoxes. Expensive in fine restaurants but cheap street food for the poor. The oyster seller has set up near the market's edge, a rough wooden tray filled with ice and shellfish in front of him. "Halfpenny for 3, he calls. "Freshest in London." You hesitate, weighing the coins in your pocket against the family's needs. Oysters are good food, filling, nutritious, a rare protein the poor can sometimes afford, but every halfpenny spent here is one not spent on coal or bread or medicine for Jamie. Emma makes the decision, pulling out a halfpenny before you can object. "We've earned a treat," she says firmly, "and we'll still bring plenty home." The oyster seller grins, revealing several missing teeth, and selects 3 oysters. With practiced efficiency, he shucks them, hands them over on a piece of seaweed, then sprinkles them with a bit of vinegar from a cruet. "Get 'em while they're cold," he quips, already turning to the next customer. You and Emma stand to one side, out of the main flow of market traffic, and eat the oysters quickly. The taste is briny, the texture slippery and strange, but the feeling of protein hitting your empty stomach is immediate and wonderful. Emma closes her eyes briefly as she swallows hers, a look of pure satisfaction on her face. "Worth it," she declares, and you have to agree. Sometimes survival means small indulgences to keep the spirit alive. The market work continues through the afternoon. More carrying, some sweeping of stalls, helping a butter seller chip the ice from her display. The physical labour keeps you warm despite the dropping temperature, and by 3 o'clock your pockets are satisfyingly heavy with coins. "We should head home," you say, noticing the light already fading. Winter days are cruelly short, and you don't want to be caught in darkness on the long walk back. Emma nods, but suggests, "Let's go by the river. Sometimes the coal barges spill when they're unloading, might find something to burn. It's a detour, but a potentially valuable one." You agree, and together you leave the relative warmth and light of the market for the darker streets leading toward the Thames. The temperature seems to drop with each street you pass, the wind growing stronger as you approach the river. The buildings here are warehouses mostly, tall and imposing, creating wind tunnels that cut through clothing like knives. By the time you reach the Thames embankment, the light is nearly gone. The river itself is a dark presence, flowing sluggishly between partially frozen banks. Ice floes drift in the current, grinding against each other with strange creaking sounds that echo across the water. By the time you reach the Thames embankment, the light is nearly gone. The river itself is a dark presence, flowing sluggishly between partially frozen banks. Ice floes drift in the current, grinding against each other with strange creaking sounds that echo across the water. This part of the river is industrial. Coal barges, cargo ships, the constant loading and unloading that keeps London fed and heated. In summer, it's bustling, chaotic. In winter, especially as evening approaches, it's eerily quiet, with reduced crews working quickly to finish before full darkness falls. You and Emma walk along the embankment, eyes scanning for anything useful, spilled coal, dropped cargo, even pieces of wood that might burn. The footing is treacherous, ice covering everything, and you have to move carefully to avoid slipping into the freezing water. "There," Emma says suddenly, pointing to a dark patch on the ice near the water's edge. "That looks like coal." She's right. A small pile of coal pieces has spilled during unloading, too little for the barge workers to bother recovering, especially as it's fallen onto the ice rather than the dock itself. Be careful, you warn as Emma inches toward it. The ice near the river's edge is unpredictable, sometimes thick enough to support weight, sometimes dangerously thin. She nods, testing each step. You follow close behind, ready to grab her if the ice cracks. It's risky, but the reward, actual coal, enough to last several days, makes the danger worthwhile. Just as Emma reaches the small pile, a shout comes from further down the embankment. A dock policeman has spotted you. "Oi, you there? That's Thames Company property?" The absurdity almost makes you laugh, as if a few spilled pieces of coal are worth anything to the massive shipping companies. But theft is theft in the eyes of the law, and the poor have few rights when it comes to salvaging what the rich have discarded. "Run," you mutter to Emma, who has already grabbed several pieces of coal and stuffed them in her pockets. You both scramble back from the river's edge, the policeman's heavy footsteps crunching on the ice behind you. Emma slips once, nearly falling, but you catch her arm and pull her along. The coal in her pockets clinks as she runs. The winter darkness is your ally now. Within moments you've disappeared into the maze of narrow lanes leading away from the river. You duck into a recessed doorway, pulling Emma with you, both of you pressing against the wall as the policeman lumbers past, still shouting, but clearly having lost your trail. When his footsteps fade, you both collapse against each other, half laughing, half gasping for breath in the frigid air. "Got it," Emma says triumphantly, pulling the coal pieces from her pockets. 6 good-sized lumps, enough for several days of meagre fires. "Worth the chase, I'd say," you nod, still catching your breath. "Ma will be pleased. This is winter survival for London's poor. Risk versus reward. Danger versus necessity. The constant calculation of what chances are worth taking to stave off cold and hunger for one more day." The walk home is tense at first, both of you watching for the policeman, but as you put distance between yourselves and the river, the tension eases. The coins in your pocket and the coal in Emma's create a warm feeling of accomplishment that almost overcomes the physical cold seeping through your inadequate clothing. The fog is returning as night falls, thick tendrils of it curling around street lamps, muffling sounds, transforming the familiar streets into something ghostly and unnerving. Somewhere distant, a church bell tolls the hour, 5 o'clock, and full darkness has descended. Emma moves closer to you as you walk, not from fear but for warmth and reassurance. Despite being 3 years younger, she has always been the braver one, but even she finds the winter fog unsettling. "Do you think Jamie will be better tonight?" she asks, her voice small in the muffling fog. "I think so," you say, hoping it's true. "He seemed cooler this morning, and we'll have good food to bring home, and coal for the fire. That helps more than any medicine." This isn't entirely accurate. Proper medicine would help more, but it's a luxury far beyond your means. For the poor, good food and warmth are the only medicines regularly available. As you turn onto your street, the familiar sights and smells of home greet you. The crooked lamppost that casts shadows like grasping fingers, the reek from the open sewer that runs along the side of the road, the sounds of too many lives packed too closely together. Home, not comfortable, not safe, certainly not healthy, but still home. You and Emma climb the creaking stairs to your room, both already imagining the family's reaction to your day's earnings and the precious coal. Small victories, but in winter, these small victories are everything. Outside your door, you pause, suddenly aware of raised voices inside. Your mother's, higher than usual with distress, and a stranger's, male and authoritative. Your father's is conspicuously absent. You exchange a worried glance with Emma, then push the door open, stepping into a scene that makes your heart sink to your frozen feet. Inside your room, a gentleman stands by the fire, if the sad collection of embers can be called a fire at all. He wears a black coat of good wool, a top hat held in gloved hands, and an expression of distaste barely concealed beneath a mask of professional concern. A parish doctor. You recognise the type immediately. They visit the slums occasionally, usually after an outbreak has grown too large to ignore, or when a particularly interesting case of disease presents itself. Your mother stands between the doctor and Jamie, who lies in bed, his coughing worse than when you left this morning. Your father is nowhere to be seen. As I was explaining to your mother, the doctor says, turning to you and Emma without introduction, the boy shows signs of bronchial inflammation, possibly pneumonia. He requires proper care. The way he says proper care makes it clear he doesn't believe such a thing possible in your home. And he's not entirely wrong. Proper care means clean air, nourishing food, adequate heat, all luxuries beyond your reach. "We're caring for him," your mother says, her voice tight with restrained anger. "We've managed before without interference." The doctor sighs, a sound of practiced patience wearing thin. "Mrs. Clark, the parish has responsibilities. With the current mortality rates among children in this district, we cannot simply look away. The workhouse infirmary, no." Your mother's voice is steel now. "He's not going to the workhouse. None of us are." You understand her fear instantly. The workhouse infirmary might offer medical care, but at a terrible price. Families were separated, forced to work for their keep despite illness, and treated with institutional cruelty disguised as charity. Many who entered the workhouse, even the infirmary, never came out again. The doctor glances at you and Emma, taking in your frost-nipped faces, your threadbare clothes, the coal dust still on Emma's hands. His gaze lingers on the small bundle of food you're still holding. "I see the children are working," he observes with a hint of disapproval, though whether at child labour or your family's need for it isn't clear. "Nevertheless, your youngest requires better conditions than this." He gestures vaguely at the room. The damp walls, the nearly dead fire, the single bed for 5 people. "We have coal," Emma blurts out, pulling the pieces from her pocket. "And food. We earned good money today." The doctor's expression softens marginally. "That's commendable, but pneumonia requires consistent warmth, clean air, proper medication." "What medication would help him?" you ask, thinking of the coins in your pocket. Perhaps there's something affordable, something you could sacrifice for. The doctor hesitates, professional instinct warring with practical reality. Camphor for the chest, beef tea for strength, perhaps a mustard plaster, but without consistent heat. He doesn't need to finish the sentence. Heat is the one medicine that matters most, and it's the hardest to maintain. "We'll keep him warm," your mother promises. "The children brought coal, and my husband—" "Yes, where is Mr. Clark?" the doctor interrupts. "I was told he was injured." "He's gone to the apothecary," your mother lies smoothly. "For camphor, as you suggested." Another lie to protect family pride. Your father has likely gone to pawn something, whatever small items of value might remain after months of winter privation. The copper kettle, perhaps, the single good shirt he wears to better jobs. The doctor looks unconvinced, but apparently decides this battle isn't worth fighting. He reaches into his bag and removes a small bottle. "Or laudanum," he says, handing it to your mother. 3 drops in water when the coughing is worst, no more than twice daily. He pauses. It's from my personal supply. There's no charge. This small kindness, unexpected from his earlier manner, seems to crack something in your mother's rigid stance. Thank you, doctor, she says, her voice softer. I'll return in 3 days, he says, replacing his hat. If he's not improved, we will need to discuss the infirmary again. His eyes sweep the room once more, and for God's sake, keep that fire going. After he leaves, your mother sinks onto the edge of the bed, the laudanum bottle clutched in her hand like a talisman. Nosy old, she mutters, but there's no real venom in it. Even unwelcome help is still help in winter. Where's Pa really gone? Emma asks, already building up the fire with the precious coal pieces. Trying to get an advance from his dock foreman, your mother sighs. Though I told him it's hopeless. They never give advances, especially not to injured men who can't work. You empty your pockets, laying out the day's earnings on the small table. We did well today, you say, trying to inject optimism into the heavy atmosphere. And there'll be work tomorrow too. The market supervisor said to come back. Your mother manages a smile, though it doesn't reach her eyes. You're good children, she says, echoing her words from last night. Too good for this life. While Emma prepares a simple meal from your market gleanings, the potatoes roasted in the now decent fire, the cabbage shredded into a pot of water to make a thin soup, you sit beside Jamie. His breathing is laboured, each inhale a struggle, each exhale a rattling sound that seems too large for his small chest. Hey, Jamie boy, you say, using the nickname from better days, look what I brought. You pull the apple from your pocket, bruised but still good, and cut a small slice with your pocket knife. Jamie's eyes light up at the rare treat. Winter fruit is an almost unimaginable luxury. Just a bit at a time, you caution as he reaches for it. Make it last. The coal fire has brought the room to a temperature that could generously be called less cold, and the smell of cooking food has transformed the space from desperate to merely poor. These small improvements feel enormous after the day's labours. Your father returns as darkness falls completely, his expression telling the story before he speaks. No advance, he confirms, unwrapping his muffler. His breath smells of gin. Just a glass by the odour, not enough to count as drinking, but enough to ward off the cold and disappointment. But I got something for the boy. From his pocket he produces a small packet of Horhang candy. The old remedy for coughs isn't real medicine, but it helps ease the throat, and the sugar provides quick energy that Jamie's sick body needs. Cost my last pennies, he admits quietly to you when Jamie is distracted by the treat. Couldn't come home with nothing, though. A man needs to provide. The pride and shame warring in his face are painful to see. You clasp his shoulder briefly, a man's gesture to another man, though you're barely 14. We're managing, you tell him. We always do. The family prayer passed from child to parent this time. Evening brings its own rituals of survival. The single candle is lit, not for light, which is an unaffordable luxury, but to check Jamie's condition and serve the simple meal. The rest of the night will pass in firelight and darkness. The food, meagre as it is, raises everyone's spirits. Jamie manages a few bites of potato and sips of cabbage water before falling back into restless sleep. Your father eats quickly, efficiently, a working man's approach to food as fuel rather than pleasure. Your mother takes less than her share, a habitual sacrifice you've seen so often you've almost stopped noticing it. After the meal, a knock at the door startles everyone. Visitors after dark are rare, usually neighbours with emergencies, or sometimes the landlord demanding overdue rent. Your father opens it cautiously to reveal Mrs. Higgins from next door, a widow with 3 small children of her own. "Sorry to bother," she says, her voice hushed, "but I heard the doctor was here, for your boy." The concern in her tone is genuine. In the slums, neighbours watch out for each other from necessity. Today's crisis at one door could be tomorrow's at another. "Just a chest cold," your mother says dismissively, though everyone knows it's worse. "He's resting now." Mrs. Higgins nods, understanding the pride that prevents full disclosure. "My Tom had something similar last winter," she says. "I found this helped." She holds out a small cloth pouch. "Onions and camphor. Hang it near his pillow at night." These small exchanges of folk medicine and practical wisdom are how the poor survive when doctors are unreachable or unhelpful. Every family has their remedies, passed down through generations, traded like currency in times of need. Your mother accepts the pouch gratefully. "You're kind to think of us." "We must look out for each other," Mrs. Higgins. Civil War soldiers were more likely to die from diarrhea than from bullets. No, really. The disease killed 44,000 Union soldiers. That's the equivalent of 10 entire Gettysburg battles, and that was just one of the many diseases they faced. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, tonight it's the American Civil War, but before we go anywhere, get comfortable. Like, actually comfortable. Pillows good? Blanket situation handled? Perfect. Trust me on this one. Your eyes open to early morning light filtering through canvas. April 1863, Union Army, somewhere in Pennsylvania. First thing you notice is the straw poking through your thin blanket, jabbing into your back like tiny daggers. The wool blanket you're wrapped in scratches your skin and smells like wet dog mixed with sweat, not like your plush mattress at home. What pulls you fully awake is the sound, a bugle blaring reveille, hundreds of men coughing, someone nearby groaning with stomach cramps. That's becoming a familiar sound in camp, too familiar. Get up, Fletcher captain's coming through. You're Thomas Fletcher, 16 years old, though your enlistment papers say 18. You've been in the Union Army for exactly 3 weeks, and every morning you wake up wondering what the hell you were thinking. Back on your family's farm in western Pennsylvania, this time of morning meant feeding animals and helping Ma with breakfast. Now it means rushing to get dressed before the officers come through, trying to find clean water to wash your face, and praying your stomach doesn't betray you like it did yesterday. "I swear to God," says your tent mate Wilkins, a factory worker from Philadelphia, "if I have to dig another latrine today, I'm deserting." He doesn't mean it, not really, but the sentiment is there. The ground outside is mud. Not regular mud, this special kind of mud made by thousands of men living in close quarters with poor drainage. It's mixed with horse manure, human waste that didn't make it to the latrines, and whatever else has been discarded. And the smell? Jesus. I can't even describe it properly. It was bad. Like gag reflex bad. You'd probably need to breathe through your mouth. You know what's wild? 3 weeks ago, you were so excited to join. You'd heard Lincoln's call for volunteers, listened to the recruiter talk about glory and saving the Union, watched the town celebrate as you and 5 other boys signed up. Your ma cried, but your pa looked proud. Said you were doing what needed doing. Nobody told you about the mud, or the food, or the dysentery. Fletcher uniform inspection in 10 minutes. Get your ass moving. That's Sergeant Miller, former schoolteacher from Boston, seems to enjoy making your life miserable. You stumble out of your tent into the chaos of camp. 15,000 men all doing the same thing at once creates a special kind of madness. The camp stretches for miles, tents arranged in neat rows that somehow still look messy, campfires sending smoke into the morning air, men in various states of dress rushing about. Your stomach growls. Breakfast will be hardtack and salt pork, if you're lucky. Hardtack is basically a brick made of flour that could crack your teeth if you're not careful. Most guys soak it in coffee to soften it up. Problem is, sometimes that reveals the weevils living inside. Extra protein, the veterans joke. You're not laughing yet. Look alive, boys. It's Corporal Jenkins, looking way too chipper for this hour. Word is we're moving out tomorrow, heading south. The words send a jolt through you. South means closer to battle. You enlisted to fight, sure, but the reality of it is starting to sink in. They say Lee's army is on the move, Jenkins continues, lowering his voice like he's sharing state secrets. Could be the big one. William, the quiet farmer's son from Ohio who sleeps on your other side, looks up from lacing his boots. My pa says every battle is the big one until the next one comes along. Smart kid, William, barely older than you, but sometimes seems like he's carrying the wisdom of someone 3 times his age. His hands are permanently stained with dirt from the farm, much like yours. The morning routine is mind-numbing but necessary. Roll call, breakfast, more drilling, cleaning your rifle until you can see your reflection in the metal. You fired it exactly twice during training. Some of the boys had never held a gun before enlisting. "You seen Johnson this morning?" asks Wilkins, chewing on hardtack that makes an audible crunch with each bite. "Infirmary," says William quietly. "Fever got worse in the night." A moment of silence falls between you. 3 men from your company have already died of disease, and you haven't even seen battle yet. The infirmary tent is a place of nightmares, men moaning in pain, the smell of infected wounds and body odour, harried doctors moving from cot to cot with barely a glance at each patient. After breakfast, which is a generous way of describing what you just ate, it's drill time. 2 hours of marching back and forth across a muddy field, practicing formations that supposedly matter in battle. Forward march, right face, about face, load in 9 times, present arms. Your drill instructor is a weather-beaten man named Corporal Haynes who fought in the Mexican War. His voice carries across the field like thunder. "You call that a formation. My dead grandmother could make a straighter line again. The rifle is heavy. That's the thing nobody tells you. The Springfield model 1861 weighs about 10 pounds, which doesn't sound like much until you're holding it at shoulder arms for an hour. Your muscles burn. Sweat trickles down your back despite the cool spring air. But Haynes keeps pushing. "When you meet Johnny Reb on the battlefield, you'll thank me. Loading your rifle needs to be instinct. You hesitate, you die. You try not to think about the dying part." Mid-morning brings a different kind of drill, bayonet practice, charging at straw dummies tied to posts, stabbing and slashing with a foot-long blade attached to your rifle. The thought of driving this into another human being makes your stomach turn, but you push the feeling down. This is what you signed up for. "Put your weight into it, Fletcher," Haynes barks. "They won't just stand there and let you poke 'em." By noon, your uniform is soaked through with sweat and your hands are blistered. There's a brief respite for a meal that's nearly identical to breakfast, and then it's equipment inspection. The sergeant walks down the line, examining each soldier's kit: rifle, bayonet, cartridge box, cat pouch, haversack, canteen, blanket, roll. Everything must be in place, clean as possible given the circumstances. "Your rifle's filthy, Thompson," he says to the man next to you. "Clean it again." When he reaches you, he pauses. "Boots coming apart, Fletcher. See the quartermaster after this." You glance down. Sure enough, the sole of your right boot is separating from the upper. Great. The quartermaster is notoriously stingy with new equipment. "Stitch it together," he'll probably say. "We're not made of boots." After inspection comes fatigue duty, the Army's term for chores. Today, your squad is assigned to dig new latrines. The old ones are filling up fast and the smell is becoming unbearable even by camp standards. So you spend 2 hours digging trenches in the hard ground, taking turns with worn shovels. "You know what my father told me before I left," says Wilkins, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow. "He said, 'Son, in the army you'll see the best and worst of men.' He didn't mention I'd be smelling the worst too." That gets a laugh from the group. Humour, however crude, is your collective shield against the reality of your situation. By late afternoon, your hands are raw and your back aches, but the new latrines are dug. You head to the creek that runs along the edge of camp to wash up. The water is cold and not particularly clean, too many men using it upstream, but it's better than nothing. As you're scrubbing dirt from your hands, William appears beside you. "Letter call came while we were digging," he says, holding out an envelope. "This one's for you." Your heart leaps. Mail from home is the most precious thing in camp. You dry your hands on your trousers and take the letter carefully. Your mother's handwriting. You'll save it for tonight, something to look forward to. "Any for you?" you ask William. He shakes his head. "Not today." Dinner is beans and salt pork, with coffee so weak it's practically brown water, but you eat every bite. One thing the army has taught you: never skip a meal. You never know when the next one is coming. As the sun begins to set, an unusual excitement runs through the camp. A travelling photographer has arrived and set up his equipment near the officers' tents. For 25 cents, soldiers can have their portrait taken to send home. "Should we do it?" Wilkins asks, genuinely excited for the first time in days. You check your meagre funds. 25 cents is a lot, nearly half of what you have left from your last pay. But the thought of sending your portrait home to your mother... "Let's do it," you decide. The line is long, but you wait patiently. When your turn comes, the photographer, a thin, nervous man with ink-stained fingers, positions you in front of a plain backdrop. "Chin up. Look brave," he instructs. You try your best to look like a soldier, not a frightened farm boy. The flash powder ignites with a bright burst and acrid smoke. That's it. In 2 weeks, if you're lucky, your mother will receive a tintype of her son in uniform. As darkness falls, campfires flicker to life across the vast encampment. Your company gathers around one, the familiar faces illuminated by the dancing flames. Someone has a harmonica and plays a mournful rendition of "Home Sweet Home" that makes your chest tight with longing. Now feels like the right time to read your letter. You carefully open the envelope, preserving it for a reply. Your mother's words leap off the page. News of home, how your father's managing the farm without you, your sister's new baby, you're an uncle now, questions about whether you're eating enough and staying warm. There's no mention of the war itself, as if by not acknowledging it, she can keep you safe. The letter ends with a pressed wildflower from the meadow behind your house. The sight of it nearly undoes you. "Good news?" asks William, noticing your expression. "I'm an uncle," you manage, carefully tucking the flower back into the envelope. Around the fire, men share bits of news from their own letters, creating a patchwork map of home across the northern states. Stories of harvests and church socials and town gossips feel like dispatches from another world, but the conversation inevitably turns to tomorrow's march, and what might lie beyond it. "My cousin was at Bull Run," says Thompson, poking at the fire with a stick. "Said it was pure chaos. Men running in every direction, couldn't tell friend from foe through the smoke." "My brother fought at Shiloh," another soldier adds. "Said the dead were so thick on the ground you couldn't walk without stepping on somebody." You listen silently, fear coiling in your stomach. These are the stories they don't print in newspapers, that recruiters don't tell wide-eyed boys signing their names. Enough of that talk. Jenkins interrupts. We'll face what comes when it comes. No use borrowing trouble. Wise words, but cold comfort as you return to your tent for the night. The canvas structure seems flimsy protection against what awaits you in the days ahead. You settle onto your bedroll, the straw crackling beneath you. Outside, the sounds of camp gradually quiet, the occasional laugh, a bout of coughing, the distant neigh of horses. Above the tent, through a small gap in the canvas, you can see stars dotting the night sky. The same stars shine over your family's farm, over the Confederate camps somewhere to the south, over a country tearing itself apart. Sleep comes fitfully, as it always does in camp. Your dreams are a confusion of home and war, familiar faces and nameless fears. Tomorrow, you march toward whatever waits beyond the horizon. What you don't know yet is that this relatively comfortable camp life, despite its hardships, will soon seem like luxury. The mud, the poor food, the endless drilling, all of it preparing you for something much worse. But for now, you sleep, rifle within arm's reach, surrounded by men who were strangers 3 weeks ago and now know your snoring patterns. In the morning, the bugle will wake you again and the next chapter of your war will begin. The bugle sounds before dawn, jerking you from what little sleep you manage to get. Outside your tent, the camp is already stirring, an anthill of activity as 15,000 men prepare to march. Rise and shine, princess, Wilkins says, already pulling on his boots. Today's the day we earn our glory. Or our coffins, William mutters, but only you hear him. Breakfast is hardtack and lukewarm coffee. You've learned to pound the hardtack into crumbs and mix it with coffee, creating a grey paste that's easier to swallow than trying to bite the rock-hard biscuit. Tastes like wet cardboard, but it fills the stomach. By first light, you're standing in formation with your company. The morning air is crisp, mist hanging low over the fields. Captain Hayes paces in front of the line, his boots polished despite the mud. He's young for a captain, maybe 25, with a neat moustache and eyes that have already seen too much. Men, he says, voice carrying across the silent ranks. We march south today to join the main army, 10 miles at least. Light packs, full canteens. Any man who falls out will answer to me personally. 10 miles doesn't sound too bad. Back home, you'd walk that far, just checking fences. But that was without a 10-pound rifle, 40 rounds of ammunition, a bayonet, canteen, haversack, and everything else the army deems necessary. The regiment moves out with surprising order, each company filing into place on the road. From your position you can see the column stretching ahead and behind, thousands of men in blue, a giant centipede winding through the countryside. The early sun glints off rifle barrels and brass buttons. Flags snap in the breeze. It would be beautiful if it wasn't terrifying. You know what's crazy, Wilkins says, as you settle into the marching rhythm. More people in this column than live in my entire hometown. He's right. It's hard to wrap your head around. All these men from farms and factories and shops across the Union, now moving as one massive organism toward whatever waits ahead. The first hour passes easily enough. The road is decent, spirits are high, and some men even sing as they march. John Brown's body echoes up and down the line. You join in at the chorus, feeling a part of something bigger than yourself. Then the road turns to mud. Recent rains have transformed the route into a brown soup that sucks at your boots with every step. What was a steady march becomes a slog. The singing dies away, replaced by curses and laboured breathing. Your pack straps dig into your shoulders. Each step requires extra effort to pull your foot from the mire. This, Wilkins pants beside you, is bullshit. 2 hours in, and the first men begin to fall out. Not many, mostly the obviously sick or elderly, but enough to notice the gaps forming in the column. An officer on horseback rides alongside, shouting encouragement that sounds more like threats. Keep moving, any man stopping will face court-martial. By noon, your uniform is soaked with sweat despite the cool spring air. Your feet are screaming, blisters forming where your damp socks rub against poorly fitted boots. The column halts briefly beside a stream, officers allowing 15 minutes to refill canteens and relieve yourselves. You collapse on a patch of grass, legs trembling with fatigue. William sits beside you, face pale beneath a layer of road dust. Neither of you speaks, saving energy for what's ahead. Wilkins, somehow still energetic, drops down beside you and pulls off his boots. First rule of marching, he says, inspecting his feet. Take care of these, or you're finished. He produces a small tin of grease from his pocket and begins rubbing it on the raw spots. Got this from an old Mex War veteran. Sheep fat mixed with beeswax. Stops the rubbing. He offers you the tin. The grease smells rancid, but you apply it gratefully to your own blistered heels. It's disgusting, but feels instantly better. How far you reckon we've come? William asks, accepting the tin next. Wilkins squints at the sun. 5-6 miles, maybe. Halfway there, if the captain was telling the truth. The thought isn't comforting. The 15-minute rest ends too quickly. Back on your feet, back in formation, back to putting one foot in front of the other. The road climbs now, winding up a gentle hill that feels like a mountain to your tired legs. As you crest the rise, something new appears ahead. Wagons, dozens of them coming toward the column. Ambulance wagons painted white with red crosses. The column parts to let them pass, and that's when you get your first real look at war. The wagons are packed with wounded men. Some sit upright, bandages around heads or arms, eyes vacant. Others lie flat, moaning with each bump in the road. The worst are ominously still, covered with blankets despite the warm afternoon. Jesus Christ, Wilkins whispers, his usual humour gone. A soldier in a blood-stained uniform sits at the edge of one wagon, missing an arm below the elbow. His remaining hand clutches a Bible. He makes eye contact with you as the wagon passes, and you see something in his expression that chills you. Not pain, but a strange distance, as if he's looking at you from across an unbridgeable chasm. The wagons keep coming. 10, 20, 30. How many men? Hundreds, at least, all headed north, away from wherever you're marching toward. That's the 12th Massachusetts, someone in the ranks says. They got hit bad at Chancellorsville. The name means nothing to you now, but soon it will join the growing lexicon of battle names that every soldier knows, places where men died in droves. The column marches on, but the mood has changed. The reality of what awaits has been made flesh in those broken bodies. Conversation dies away. Even the officers ride more quietly. By late afternoon, your world has narrowed to the few feet of road ahead and the endless cycle of placing one foot before the other. Your shoulders burn from the weight of your gear. Your throat is parched despite careful sips from your canteen. Hunger gnaws at your belly. When the order finally comes to make camp, it's like a reprieve from execution. The regiment files off the road into a large meadow, already filling with other units. Tents go up with practiced efficiency, despite exhausted hands. Fires flicker to life as darkness falls. You sit with your company, too tired to even complain, watching the coffee boil in the shared pot. Your feet throb inside your boots, but you're afraid to remove them, not sure you can get them back on over your swollen feet. 10 miles, the captain said. Wilkins groans, lying flat on his back. That was 15 if it was a step. 16, corrects a new voice. You look up to see a lean, weathered soldier standing at the edge of your firelight. He's older, 30 at least, with a sergeant's stripes and a cavalry trooper's unmistakable bow-legged stance. "Saw you boys coming in," he says, squatting down beside your fire. "First big march?" You nod, too tired for words. He chuckles. "Gets easier. Sort of." He extends a hand. "Sergeant Michael Reeves, 8th Pennsylvania Cavalry." "You been fighting long?" William asks after introductions. Reeves nods, accepting a cup of coffee from Wilkins. "Since 61. Bull Run, Peninsula Campaign, Antietam, Fredericksburg." He lists the battles like stops on a familiar road. "What's it like?" you hear yourself ask. "The fighting, I mean." Reeves studies you over the rim of his cup. His eyes are green, you notice, but somehow darker than any eyes you've seen. "Ain't like anything they tell you," he says finally. "Ain't glorious, ain't noble. It's loud and it's confusing and it's..." He pauses. "It's men trying to kill each other is what it is." He must see the fear in your faces because his expression softens slightly. "Look, you're in a good outfit. 6th Corps has solid leadership. Stay together, do what your officers tell you, and most of you will make it through. Most, not all." The word hangs in the air. "Any of you boys know how to play poker?" Reeves asks, changing the subject. None of you do, but he teaches you the basics, using pebbles for chips. For an hour, you forget your aching feet and the long march ahead as you learn flushes and straights and full houses. Reeves wins most hands, but lets each of you take a victory too. As the game winds down, he becomes reflective. "Been at this 2 years now," he says, shuffling the worn cards with practiced ease. "Seen things I hope you boys never do. But I'll tell you this, it ain't the Rebs you need to fear most out here." "What then?" asks William. "Yourself," Reeves says simply. "Fear will kill you faster than any bullet. Man gets scared enough, he freezes up, or he runs. Either way, he's done for." He deals another hand, then continues. "But there's something worse than fear out here." You wait for him to continue, not sure you want to hear it. "Indifference," he says. "Seen it happen to good men. They stop caring, stop seeing the dead as people, start thinking of everything as just something to get through." He taps the deck. "That's when you lose something you don't get back." The conversation turns sombre after that. Reeves bids you good night, promising to look for you when the dance starts, as he puts it. Sleep comes quickly, despite the hard ground. Your body is too exhausted to care about comfort, but sometime in the dead of night you wake suddenly, unsure why. Then you hear it, screaming. Not battle cries or calls for help, but the terrible sound of a man trapped in his own mind. "Night terrors," William whispers beside you. "My uncle got 'em after the Mex War. Somewhere in the vast encampment, a soldier is reliving horrors in his sleep. The screams eventually stop, but sleep is harder to find afterward. Dawn arrives with the inevitable bugle. Your body protests every movement, muscles stiff from yesterday's march, but there's no choice. The army moves on with or without you. Breakfast is meagre. The supply wagons are running behind, the quartermaster explains. You divide hardtack and share coffee, everyone getting less than they need. As your company forms up, you notice gaps in the ranks. Some men who started yesterday aren't here today, fallen out, sent to the ambulance wagons, or simply disappeared in the night. Desertion is rarely mentioned, but everyone knows it happens. The The second day's march begins like the first, but the pace seems slower. Men are already tired, feet already blistered. The road is crowded now with artillery batteries, supply wagons and cavalry scouts moving back and forth along the column. Around mid-morning, a new sound reaches your ears, a distant rumble like summer thunder, but in a cloudless sky. Artillery, says an older private named Davis. Big guns, 15-20 miles south. A murmur passes through the ranks. Battle somewhere ahead. The abstract suddenly becomes concrete. Your mouth goes dry despite the water in your canteen. The column presses on, the distant bombardment a constant reminder of your destination. The officers look more serious now, conferring in hushed voices as they ride alongside. By noon, new sights appear along the roadside, evidence that the war has passed this way before. A chimney standing alone, the house it belonged to now ashes and blackened timbers, fields trampled by thousands of boots and hooves, an abandoned cannon, its barrel burst from overuse. "Welcome to Virginia, boys," Wilkins says grimly. You're in the south now, enemy territory, though this part has changed hands so many times it's hard to say who it belongs to anymore. The few civilians you see watch from doorways with expressionless faces, neither welcoming nor hostile, just tired. A mile further, you pass something that stops conversations mid-sentence. A tree beside the road, and from one sturdy branch, a noose. It swings empty in the breeze, but the message is clear. Someone died here, whether deserter, spy, or civilian, impossible to say. The march continues through the afternoon, your feet moving automatically now, mind somewhere far away. You think of home, of your mother's cooking, of the soft bed waiting in a farmhouse hundreds of miles north. The distance feels insurmountable. Late in the day, rain begins to fall. A gentle shower at first, then a steady downpour that soaks through your uniform in minutes. Water drips from your cap into your eyes. Your already blistered feet now squish with each step, the wet leather of your boots rubbing raw skin. When camp is finally made, it's in a muddy field already churned by previous regiments. No fires tonight, the wood is too wet, and smoke might give away positions to enemy scouts. Cold rations, eaten in the rain, huddled under whatever shelter you can find. Your tent, pitched hastily in the downpour, leaks from a dozen places. You, Wilkins, and William sit in miserable silence, water pooling around your legs, too wet and tired to even complain. "My sister got married last Sunday," William says suddenly, staring at nothing. "Wrote me about it last month, said she wished I could be there to see it." The random statement hangs in the damp air, a reminder of the normal lives continuing elsewhere, oblivious to your current misery. "My girl's probably walking out with Jimmy Porter by now," Wilkins adds. "Told her not to wait, but she promised she would." You think of your own family, wondering what they're doing at this moment. Sitting down to dinner, perhaps. Your empty chair at the table, your father saying grace, maybe asking God to watch over his son. "Why'd you join up?" you ask Wilkins, realising you've never discussed it. He's quite so long, you think he hasn't heard. Finally, "Factory where I worked shut down. Army pays regular, at least." A pause. "You?" The truth is complicated. Patriotism, yes. Adventure, certainly. But mostly because everyone expected it, because saying no seemed harder than saying yes. "Seemed like the right thing," is all you say. William nods, as if this makes perfect sense. "My older brother died at Antietam," he says softly. "Felt like I owed it to him." The rain drums on the canvas above. Somewhere in the vast camp, a harmonica plays a melancholy tune that seems to capture everything you're feeling. Sleep comes in fits and starts, your body too uncomfortable for true rest. Twice you wake to roll away from water dripping directly on your face. Morning arrives grey and drizzly. The march resumes, somehow even more miserable than before. The mud is deeper, the fatigue more profound, the muscles more sore. But something new enters the equation today. Anticipation. The artillery sounds are closer now, no longer distant rumbles but distinct booms that occasionally shake the ground. Cavalry couriers gallop past the column with increasing frequency, carrying dispatches to and from the front. You're close now, close to whatever awaits. Around midday, the column halts more permanently than the usual short breaks. Officers ride back and forth, conferring and pointing. The men use the opportunity to rest, though the air of tension prevents true relaxation. "What's happening?" William asks, though none of you have answers. An hour passes before Captain Hayes approaches your company. His uniform is mud-splattered, but his voice is steady. "We'll be making camp here," he announces. "The main Union army is deployed 3 miles ahead. We join them tomorrow morning." The news sweeps through the ranks like wildfire. Tomorrow you might see battle. As tents are raised and fires lit, rumours fly faster than cavalry scouts. The Confederate army is just beyond that ridge. No, they're retreating toward Richmond. Lee himself is commanding the Southern forces. No, he's miles away. The fighting will be minimal. No, it will be the biggest battle of the war. In this storm of speculation, Sergeant Reeves appears at your campfire again. He looks different today. Alert, focused, his cavalry uniform crisp despite the conditions. "Thought I'd find you boys here," he says, declining coffee this time. "Wanted to check in before tomorrow." "What's really happening?" Wilkins asks directly. Reeves glances around, then lowers his voice. "Confederate forces are dug in along a creek about 4 miles south. Good defensive position. Our boys have been probing their lines since yesterday, looking for weakness." "Will we attack?" you ask, your mouth suddenly dry. "Or be attacked," Reeves says with a shrug. "That's for the generals to decide. Either way, your regiment will likely see action." He stands to leave, then hesitates. "Listen," he says, looking at each of you in turn. "First time under fire there's no preparing for it. Just remember your training. Load, aim, fire, load, aim, fire. Don't think beyond that." As darkness falls, an unusual quiet settles over the camp. Men write letters home by firelight, clean their weapons for the dozenth time, or simply sit in contemplation. A chaplain moves among the companies, offering prayers and communion to those who want it. You find yourself unable to write the letter you've been composing in your head all day. What do you say when tomorrow might be your last day on Earth? What words can possibly bridge that gap? In the end, you write simply, "Dear Ma and Pa, we've marched to Virginia. I'm well. Don't worry. I'll write again when I can. Your loving son, Thomas." It feels inadequate, but it will have to do. You seal the envelope and give it to the company mail orderly, who promises to send it north with the next courier. The night deepens. Fires burn low. Around one nearby, a group of veterans from another regiment are sharing stories, not of battles, as you might expect, but of strange occurrences and superstitions. "Swear on my mother's Bible," one bearded soldier is saying as you approach their circle. "Saw a man at Fredericksburg take 7 bullets, center mass, and walk away without a scratch. Had a Bible in his breast pocket, stopped the first one, and the rest just went around him somehow." Another veteran snorts. "That's nothing. We had a fella in our company, night before Antietam, dreamed he saw his own grave with his name on it. Next day, first volley, bullet right through the heart. You listen, both fascinated and disturbed. These are the tales of the war that don't make it into newspapers or official reports." "You know what keeps you alive out there?" asks a third soldier, a sergeant with an empty sleeve pinned up. "Not luck, not skill. It's having something to live for. Man wants to see home again bad enough. Somehow the bullets miss him. Or having something worth dying for," adds another quietly. You return to your own fire, thoughtful. Wilkins is cleaning his rifle again, though it's already immaculate. William stares into the flames, saying nothing. None of you mentions tomorrow. As you settle onto your bedroll for what might be your last peaceful night, you find yourself hyper-aware of everything. The scratch of wool blankets, distant laughter from another campfire, the occasional whinny of horses, life in all its messy detail suddenly precious. Sleep, when it finally comes, is surprisingly deep. Your exhausted body overrides your anxious mind, and in the black hours before dawn, the bugle calls you to what waits ahead. The bugle tears through darkness, jerking you from sleep. For a moment, disorientation grips you. Where are you? Then reality crashes back. Virginia, the army. Today, around you, the camp erupts into activity. Men stumbling from tents, officers shouting orders, the clatter of equipment being gathered in the pre-dawn gloom. No time for proper breakfast, just hardtack stuffed into pockets and cold coffee gulped down between preparations. Captain Hayes moves through the company, his face grim. Full battle gear, 60 rounds of ammunition per man. Fill your canteens completely. Your hands shake slightly as you prepare. Loading your cartridge box feels different today. Each paper-wrapped bullet might soon be fired at another human being, or might save your life. The weight of your equipment, normally annoying, now feels reassuring, especially the bayonet. As the eastern sky lightens to grey, your regiment forms up with the others of your brigade. No drums this morning, no bands playing, just thousands of men standing silently in formation, breath fogging in the cool air. Colonel Montgomery, your regimental commander, rides to the front. Even from your position in the ranks, you can see his face is deadly serious. "Men of the 140th Pennsylvania," his voice carries over the quiet ranks. "Today we join the Army of the Potomac in battle against Confederate forces. You will conduct yourselves with courage and discipline. Remember your training. Remember why we fight. For the Union. For freedom." The speech is brief, lacking the fiery patriotism of recruitment rallies. This is different. This is real. The regiment moves out as dawn breaks, marching in column along a narrow country road. After about an hour, you notice a change in the surroundings. Fence rails torn down for firewood, trees splintered by artillery, deep ruts in the road from gun carriages, the signs of armies. Then you hear it. Not the distant rumble of yesterday, but actual gunfire. Sharp cracks of rifles, the heavier boom of artillery. It's still some distance away, but unmistakable now. Wilkins glances at you, sweat already beading on his forehead despite the cool morning. "Guess they started without us." No one laughs. Humour feels strange now, out of place. The column quickens its pace. Messages pass up and down the line of officers. Ahead, you can see a ridge where other Union regiments are already deployed. Blue lines against the green hillside. "That's our position," Captain Hayes announces, pointing to an open field near the centre of the ridge. "We're reinforcing the line. As your regiment approaches, the sounds of battle grow louder. You can now distinguish individual volleys, the synchronized crash of hundreds of rifles firing at once. The ground occasionally trembles from artillery. Your mouth is desert dry despite water from your canteen. Your bowels feel loose. Veterans say it happens to everyone before battle, the body preparing to shed weight for flight or fight. Some men stop to relieve themselves at the roadside, ignoring the usual camp modesty. "Jesus," William whispers beside you. "Look at that." Beyond the ridge, smoke hangs over the distant tree line, white puffs from artillery mixed with the darker smoke of rifle fire. Through gaps in the smoke, you can see flashes of movement, men advancing, retreating, or falling. Colonel Montgomery halts the regiment at the base of the ridge. Fix bayonets. The sound of steel blades clicking onto 1,500 rifle barrels sends a chill through you. This isn't drill anymore. You climb the ridge in line of battle, shoulder to shoulder with the men of your company, other companies ahead and behind. Every step brings the sounds of conflict closer, louder. At the crest, you get your first clear view of the battlefield below. It's nothing like you imagined. A creek runs through a shallow valley bordered by woods on the far side. Between the ridge where you stand and that creek is open farmland, now torn by shell holes and scattered with dark shapes you realise with horror are bodies. The far woods are shrouded in gun smoke, but you can see flashes of fire within, Confederate positions. Union batteries are positioned along your ridge, the artillerymen working their guns with mechanical precision. Every few seconds, a cannon fires with a deafening boom, adding to the constant crash of sound. Captain Hayes positions your company in a gap between two batteries. "We hold this line," he shouts over the noise. "Fire on command only." You stand in the front rank, rifle gripped so tightly your knuckles are white. Beside you, William's face is pale, his lips moving in what might be prayer. On your other side, Wilkins stares ahead with strange intensity. Minutes pass like hours. The Confederate artillery has the range of your position now. Shells explode on the ridge, showering dirt and deadly fragments. You flinch at each explosion, fighting the urge to duck or run. 100 yards to your right, a shell lands directly on a gun crew. The explosion lifts one man completely off his feet, throwing him yards away. Another crumples instantly. The survivors continue loading their cannon as if nothing happened. "Get ready," Captain Hayes shouts. Through the smoke in the valley, you see movement. A line of grey, Confederate infantry advancing across the open ground toward your position. Their battle flags flutter above them. Even at this distance, you can see bayonets gleaming. Colonel Montgomery rides behind your line. "Steady, boys, hold your fire." The grey line advances steadily despite artillery tearing gaps in their ranks. They're within rifle range now, but still no order comes to fire. The waiting is its own kind of torture. The command finally comes when the Confederates are about 300 yards away. You raise your rifle, trying to steady it against your shoulder as you've practiced. But this is different from shooting at targets. These are men coming toward you, intent on killing you if they can. Fire. 1,500 rifles discharge as one. The noise is like physical force punching through your ears. The recoil slams your rifle butt against your shoulder. Smoke envelops the line, so thick you can hardly see. Through breaks in the smoke, you glimpse the effect of your volley. The Confederate line staggers, dozens of men falling, but they don't break. They continue advancing, and now they're returning fire. Bullets whip past with angry buzzing sounds. Some strike the ground, kicking up dirt. Others hit with the sickening thud of lead striking flesh. The man 2 spaces to your left jerks backward, a dark hole appearing in his forehead. He drops without a sound, dead weight. "Load," Captain Hayes orders. Your training takes over. Bite cartridge, pour powder, ram bullet, place cap. Each motion practiced hundreds of times, now performed with desperate urgency. Aim fire. Another volley, another shock of noise and smoke. The rhythm continues. Load, aim, fire, load, aim, fire. As if time has compressed into just these 3 actions. Your world narrows to the rifle in your hands, the choking smoke around you, the grey line still advancing despite your fire. You lose track of how many volleys you've fired, your shoulder aches from the rifle's recoil, your ears ring so badly you can barely hear commands following the actions of men beside you instead. The Confederate line has closed to about 100 yards, close enough to see faces beneath the hats to distinguish officers from enlisted men. Someone screams to your right, not the scream of fear, but the higher, more terrible sound of agony. You don't look, can't look. Keep loading, keep firing. A new sound cuts through the chaos. The rebel yell. The Confederate line surges forward at a run, their high-pitched battle cry sending ice through your veins. "Stand firm," Colonel Montgomery shouts, riding behind your line. "Repel them with cold steel if—" His words cut off as a bullet strikes him. He slumps forward over his horse's neck, then falls heavily to the ground. The horse bolts. The Confederate charge reaches the bottom of the ridge and starts up the slope. They're only 50 yards away now, running hard despite their casualties. Captain Hayes draws his sword. Prepare to receive charge. You grip your rifle with bayonet fixed, heart hammering against your ribs. They're going to reach your line. This will be hand to hand. But then, movement to your left. Fresh Union troops arriving at a run, thousands of them, forming quickly into battle line. Their artillery unlimbers on a small rise, the crews working with frantic energy. A new thunder joins the cacophony as these guns open fire on the Confederate flank. The effect is devastating. Entire sections of the Grey Line disappear in explosions of dirt and smoke. The Confederate charge falters, then stops. For a moment, the battleground becomes a tableau. Blue and grey lines facing each other across a shrinking gap, the air between filled with smoke and death. Then the grey line breaks. Not all at once, but man by man, squad by squad, they begin falling back toward the creek. Their retreat quickly becomes general. Fire, pour it into them, Captain Hayes orders. You find yourself firing mechanically, reloading and firing again without conscious thought. The smoke is so thick you can barely see your targets. You're not sure if you're hitting anything, not sure if you want to. The Confederate retreat becomes a rout, men running, dropping equipment to move faster. Union artillery continues firing into their backs as they flee toward the creek and the woods beyond. And then, sudden silence. Not complete, moans of the wounded rise from the field. Officers still shout commands, but the constant crash of battle subsides. You stand panting, ears ringing, surrounded by smoke that slowly drifts away on the breeze. Your rifle barrel is too hot to touch. Your mouth tastes of gunpowder. Your uniform is soaked with sweat and black